What's going on, YouTube? We are going to do a different style of video today. I've done a few in the past and you guys have seemed to really get a lot out of it, more or less. And these are the type of videos that when I was first getting into fishing, I really searched for, because I was just trying to soak up as much information as I could. And these type of videos were what helped me the most to progress as an angler. And I want to provide that opportunity to you guys and condense a lot of really good information within one video based on one guiding premise. Now, I've discussed this type of thinking, it's a type of language of fishing, before in a couple of other videos a year ago, but we really haven't gone any more into detail about it in recent videos. It's just been fishing. So as a part of the channel and what I've discussed in the past, I want it to be very informational and very beneficial overall, just past entertainment. I want you guys to be able to come here and learn real world information that will put big fish in the boat or on the bank or in the kayak anywhere in the country or world. This is the language of fishing that has been hugely successful and helpful with me and all of my friends. It's nothing that I came up with. It's just something that I was exposed to very early in my fishing career. And I try to do that with people as much as possible so that they can just get the exposure to really good information about fishing itself and the science of it and how fish function early on in their fishing career, so they don't go down the paths of, just that aren't the best way to go, in my opinion. Now, I'm not the end all be all on this, but I do love fishing and I am very good at picking apart what's, for lack of a better word, bullshit or not. So what I do on my channel is absolutely no bullshit, and this video is going to be exactly like that, and you're going to learn a ton about fishing, I hope. And if you've got more questions or want to see more videos on this subject, leave comments in the description below or the comment section below, and I will do my best to answer them. And I'll try to make another video along these lines in the near future when I get back from an Arizona hunting trip that I'm going on this next week with me and my buddies. Additionally, it's Christmas Day, and Merry Christmas to you guys. If you're at home or overseas or wherever you're at, I hope you're having a good time with friends or family. And if you're not, I hope this video gives you a little bit of joy and a little bit of connection to a group of people, the fishing community, that will help you so much if you can make those connections. So stay tuned, and I'm gonna throw a bunch of information at you now. So the number one secret to successful fishing, whether that's trout fishing, bass fishing, catfishing, striper fishing, anything along those lines, anything freshwater and saltwater, is this stuff right here. Now, I know this looks like a college textbook, because it is. It was written by a college professor who absolutely loved fishing, grew up his whole life doing it, and he was sick of just misinformation within the fishing community, and he wanted to write the language of fishing for everyone to be able to understand. And that is called Buck Perry's Guidelines for Fishing Success. Now, what is that? Who is Buck Perry? So Buck Perry was a physicist professor at a university. He also was a business owner and one of the best bass fishermen of all time. So when he was growing up, he would go fishing with his dad and his grandpa, and they would, like everyone else when they first start, cast at the bank and constantly do that. And they would rarely have success, and on a certain few days, they would have decent success. And while he was doing that over the years, he, I don't know his exact thought process, but he was like, this doesn't make any sense. There's obviously more fish in these waters. They've got to feed more often than what we're catching them. And we're just casting at the bank, and it just didn't make any sense to him. So he reasoned that shallow water is not the home of the fish. It's not where they spend the majority of their time. Now, there are times when they are there based on certain conditions, but that deep water, the main channel, the deep holes are where the fish live and spend 95% of their time. So that's where they spend their time. And why do they do that? Well, one of the easiest examples that I can give that he gave in his books, at least in the beginning book, is if you look at a pond in the winter. Now, what happens when it gets really cold? Well, that shallow water around the edge of the pond freezes up more quickly than the center. Why? Because there's less water there. What does that mean? Now, the shallow water means that there is less of a buffer between the fish and the outside world and all of the outside elements. Now, fish and humans are nowhere near the same. However, life in general wants stability. Whether that's a dog or a cat or a human, we need stability, we need a home. So Buck reasoned that because of this, it did not make sense for them to live in the shallow water all the time and spend most of their time there. They were in the deep water most of the time, and they became active. Now, active means they're feeding. They could, when that happened, move to shallow water using specific topographical features. Now, a lot of you guys are, Mark, what's a topographical feature and how does that relate to fishing? Okay, so fish, the way they see the world or the way they see the water is much different from us because they are inside the water. Now, what kind of roadmap, what kind of direction do they have? Well, it's not the top, it's the bottom. That's what changes. The bottom of the lake, the bottom of the river, the bottom of the pond, it has feature changes or contours. That's a contour is an increase or decrease in depth. And that's how they see their world. And Buck, in his first few books, walks us through how the fish use these bottom contours, these features of the lake or river or whatever body of water you're in, to become active. Now, when they become active, they don't have to go shallow. They can stay deep. But when they do get really active and they move shallow, they use these specific topographical features like points, humps, bars, underwater islands, man-made structure like dams and wing walls to become active. That's their map to the feeding ground where they want to feed at. And basically, there's a lot of different factors that affect how they move when they move shallow, when they move, how often they do it, and how long they're there. And those change all the time. And it would take me, I still don't fully understand it, but it would take me hours and hours to explain all the different reasons why they move active for different types of fish. And different fish relate to things differently just because of their makeup, like what type of fish they are. So like catfish can generally be deeper than other fish because they can tolerate lower oxygen levels. But bass can go up to 100 feet deep as well. But more likely, the really deep stuff is catfish centric, like 60, 70, 80, 100 feet. But I digress. That's what we're going to look at today. That is the number one secret to fishing in general period, bar none. If you go down the Buck Perry rabbit hole and try to learn, what it's about and come into it with an open mind, because a lot of what's discussed there is completely counterculture to what fishing is. However, in recent years, people like Kevin Van Dam, Jacob Wheeler, lots of other fishermen have even mentioned Buck Perry in their fishing seminars and whatnot. And you can tell if you understand structure fishing and what that is, when they're talking about how they fish, it is that, even if they don't say that. And there are lots of other great anglers across the country from different species who I've talked to who have never even heard of Buck Perry, but through decades of experience and talking with others and things of that nature, they've come to similar conclusions all across the country. So that in and of itself means that there's something going on there. There's something that is real, it's quantifiable, and it's repeatable across different lakes everywhere throughout the country. So that's what I really want to look into today and give you a basic understanding of what that is. And so to do that, I'm going to throw up a couple pictures of structures next to me here, and we're going to talk about that in detail for a little while. but I'm not going to spend 20 or 30 minutes on each one. I'm just going to give you a basic overview of like, hey, this is what's going on, this is what this is, and this is how you begin to understand it and use it to catch more fish. And this is obviously something I'm very passionate about. I love learning, and I love teaching, and I love seeing other people be successful. And it doesn't have to be from something I figured out on my own, because this isn't it. It's just something that I've learned and was passed down to me, and I'm trying to pass on to you guys, because I believe it's really, really important to know this stuff. No matter your skill or experience level in fishing, how much money you've got or how much money you don't have, like, it doesn't matter. Like, everyone can benefit from this. And I hope it helps you guys out as much as it's helped me. And I hope you catch some big giant fish because of it and make memories that you can share with your friends and families for the rest of your life, and use fishing as a way to build relationships and friendships with people that are going to last your entire life and be there with you through the good times and the bad. That's what fishing is all about, and I want to help you be able to do that through successful fishing as much as possible. Okay, so to begin this, I hope this filming looks decent. We're going to use this free online application or web page called Navionics Web App. And when you go on Google or Safari or whatever kind of browser you are using, you just want to Google Navionics Web App, and it's going to be the first thing you click on. And it is an online free topographical map that you can pull up like thousands of lakes and rivers worth of information of for free. So the internet is a very powerful tool for fishing, and to be able to understand this stuff, we've got to first understand the Buck Perry thing. So this is a lake near me called Fort Loudon Lake, or it's a reservoir really. Now, a lake is not man-made, it just naturally occurs, and there's lots of different kinds of them. A reservoir is something that was created by humans. So this reservoir is the first one on the Tennessee River chain, and it was created by impounding or damming up the Tennessee River way down here in Lenoir City. So there's a dam right here that TVA built back in, I don't know, the 30s, something like that, that dammed up this whole area and flooded tens of thousands of acres of farmland. Okay, so basically there's a big old river channel going through it, and then there's all this flooded farmland with creeks and stuff that lead into it. Okay, so that's what a reservoir is, and that's very important to know the difference between the two, because that affects how we look at things. So one of the most important things for fishing to begin to understand is what a point is. So a point is literally a point that leads into deep water. And this is one of the easiest things to pick up on in fishing and use to catch more fish. So I'm going to just move around here, and we're going to find us a really good point to look at. Now, the upper end of the reservoirs is usually more river-like, and the lower end gets wider and more lake-like. And they're all different, but that's generally how they're set up. Okay, and so we're going to pick a point here. Let's see if we can find a really good one. We're going to go, there's one that would be easier for you guys to look at, and it's on the lower end here. Let me find it real quick. That's not it. Let's switch over to sonar chart. Now you see how I hit sonar chart down here at the bottom left hand corner? I don't know if you can see it, but there's an option down here where you can click. Let's see here. You can click, look, close the laptop, and you can choose between Navionics or sonar charts. Sonar charts are way more detailed, so that is what we're going to use. Let me set this tripod back up, guys. I'm here by myself filming this, so you're just going to have to bear with me. Okay, so we've got that set back up. Let's zoom out here. All right, so we've got sonar charts. And as you can tell, there's a lot more black lines now. It's just become way more detailed. So let's find us a point to look at. I can't remember which one I'm wanting to show you. One second. Okay, here's a good one. So we've got, let's go here. So on this application, they're different on each one. Like Humminbird has a map, Lowrance, like a bunch of them have their own map, lake mapping systems. But on this one, white water, the white area is the deepest area and blue is shallower. So right here you see this white area. This is the old riverbed. So this is where the river naturally came through, and this was the river banks right here. Okay. Now, one thing we've got to remember now is that deep water is the home of the fish, and deep water is relative for the area that you're in. So in some areas or rivers, 10 feet super deep, and in others like this one, 10 feet super shallow. So it's all dependent on where you're at. So you've got to use your own judgment of like, okay, this is deep for this area because the average overall depth is this, and so this is considered deep. Okay, so here, let's rotate this back around. Bloop. Okay, so here, this water right here is the deepest water in the area. Most of the fish, most of the time, are going to spend their lives living in this deep water. And when they become active or they're moving into spawn, they've got to use specific features to do that. So they've got to have a road into that area. Now for this area in particular, let's find it. Let's do this one. Okay, for this area in particular, we've got this really deep point right here that comes way out. So where these lines get really close together, that means it drops off really quickly. So it's just straight down. And when they're a little bit more spread out, it's a tapered break line. So that means it's kind of a gradual slope down. But you can see right here on top of this, it's 8 feet of water in the summer. Right now, that's probably 4 feet of water right now, and you could knock a prop off. I bet there's a rock right here. Somebody's put something in there. Yep, rocks. There you go. So this is like prime time bass, catfish, pretty much everything area, stripers. And I've caught a lot of fish on this point. If you know where you're at, where this is at, and you fish Fort Loudon, well, here's you an Easter egg, a Christmas gift from Mark. But for people throughout the country who don't fish here, this is just a really good example of something you want to look for, okay? So this point right here, here's the land, and you can kind of tell what a point is just by looking at the land, comes way, way, way out. So all points are not the same. A lot of them would only be right here, and then it just drops straight down. That's okay, but one that runs really far out and comes all the way out to this deep water, those are the best ones because that gives more area for the fish to become active in different waves and greater access to the deep water in different areas. So these fish from the main channel here, in my experience, there's a couple of breaks that come up through here. So there's a few trees and rocks and stuff that kind of lead them up into this area. And they use this area right here to become active and move up out of this deep water. So if I'm fishing something like this, I usually will start shallower up here. Let's say I'm casting for bass. I would start casting the bank here, and that's going to pick up the most active fish. And then I'm gradually going to move further and further and further out with different types of baits to fish that depth. So you've got to use deeper crankbaits or something like that. That's a video for another time on the tools to use to dissect this. I'm just kind of showing you what you want to look for to start fishing different areas, whether you're a bass guy, a catfish guy, a striper guy, muskie guy, whatever. This is prime time for everything, just depends on what is in the water while you're fishing. So for here, if I'm catfishing, there's so much rock and structure and cover, which is rock and timber and stuff right here, that you can't really do anything other than anchor on it, or you can sometimes drag, but you get really snagged up. So if I'm going to fish something like this and I've got current, I'm going to anchor up above here, right here. I'm going to throw my anchor about right here, and we're going to let our anchor rope out, and then we're going to stop right here. So the current flow is pushing us this way, and we've got the back of our boat right here. Okay, and then we can fan cast out on top of the point, down the break line, and then we can zing a couple really far out here to pick up fish that aren't super active. Now, if you're fishing in this area and you don't get bit within 20 to 30 minutes, it's probably time to move on. Now, I usually give areas more time than other people. I don't like running all over the lake because if they're not active in one area of the lake, they're probably not going to be active in another unless there's just some kind of thing that's going on there that's different than down here. Like you've got more current on the upper end because they turned the dam up on upstream, or the lower end is like super gen clear and it's just crappy fishing. That's another thing to talk about later. But I usually spend more time picking apart an area like this than running all over the place. So that would be the first thing I would do. Another thing you could do that a lot of guys do if you don't want to throw an anchor, you see how this point comes really far out right here. If you've got a trolling motor that's got a spot lock feature, you can position your boat right here at the tip of it where it starts to hit the deeper water, and you put down lines down, which means you drop them down to the bottom, reel up a couple of cranks, and you just sit there. And basically what you're doing then is you're hoping to pick up these fish that are moving up out of this channel and hitting this point to become active, or they're coming back in here to feed in this big bay where there's shad and all kinds of other smaller bait fish. And you're just sitting here to intercept them moving in and out or up onto this point. So that right there is a point, okay? Now, there's, again, certain points are better or worse. You never know, all right? The next thing we're going to look at now are underwater islands, or just underwater islands. It's something in the middle of the river channel that was there naturally before they flooded it. So it was like out of the water before TVA flooded the area, and now they're underwater. And these can be some of the best areas to target big fish because they're usually very deep, and they usually have a point on either end that the fish will move up onto to become active, and it's just like clear as day where they're going to come up. So that's the next thing we're going to look at, and we've moved to another lake down on Watts Bar because there's a really good underwater island down there that's easy for me to point out and show you guys like what it looks like. And so that's what we're going to look at now. Okay, so we've got this underwater island right here. You can see it. Again, the blue is shallower, white is deeper, and you can see where this channel cuts down from it and comes down. And we've got a really deep hole that's been formed on the back end of this because when it splits like this, the current will get faster, and then when it comes back together, it'll dig a hole out at the very bottom. And a lot of times down below, it'll have this swirling type of effect just from where the currents are colliding right here. So this is going to be, we're going to zoom in. Sorry, I just got this Mac and it's hard for me to do stuff. So here's 93 feet of water. So it's crazy, crazy deep. Plenty of room for big fish, and there's usually lots of bait in these areas, okay? And as you can tell, this underwater island's like 8 or 9 football fields long. So that's what we're looking at. We're going to start on the front end because this can be a good area to fish as well. So when you've got current moving down this way, a lot of times sediment and trees and other things are going to get deposited on the front end of this island right here. So if you're a trout guy, you know, it's basically like a rock on a riffle or something like that, and there's a log on it. And a lot of times there's going to be fish hanging right around that. This is just on a different type of scale, much larger, but very similar type of application. So we've got this current moving down this way, or no current, and we've got some trees sitting down here, okay? So these fish moving around in the channel, in this creek channel, generally live in this area of the lake most of the time. And a lot of times there'll be bait up on top of these shallow-ish areas. So you can go and mark the trees down here with your graph, or if you don't have one, you've just kind of got to assume that there's something down there. So these fish that are in this area, when they become active, they'll start right here, and they'll move up gradually on top of this underwater island to become active. And what I've found when I'm fishing these areas is if you don't have a whole lot of cover, like rocks and trees and stuff that are going to snag you up, you can drag this and pick up a lot of fish. Or if you do have some nasty stuff on these areas right here, you can set up an anchor. Now you could do this for bass if it's a shallow island. I've never really bass fished this deep, but I have done it on other islands that are much shallower that come up to 8 or 9 feet, and throw crankbaits and spinner baits or even live shad on top of it. But for catfish and stripers, if you're going to cut bait it, you can throw an anchor right here, set your boat up about in this area, and then make you a fan cast all the way around this. And that way you're covering deep water here, and then up on top of the point. And you'll know really quickly if you're going to have active fish up here, because the only reason they're going to be up here instead of down here is if they're feeding. So you'll know that right there. Another thing we can look at here on this structure is these ledges right here. You see how they come really close together? This is a good area to set up as well. You could throw an anchor here and fish this, or you can take your troll motor and troll up and down this vertically to pick up the fish that are moving up and down this ledge, okay? Now, if the fish are really, really active and you're getting bit right here, you can come and fish just right on top of this island and just set up here and cast all in this whole area. Now, if they are that active and up on here, you're going to have one of the best days of fishing you've ever had. Same thing if you're in another lake. This is just a good example of one here. On the back end here is probably what I would say the best on this particular area. Why? Because this is the absolute deepest water in the area for miles. So generally your biggest fish are going to live near this deeper water in an area. And what do we have leading to that? Well, we've got a point that directly leads into this deep water that these big fish can use to become active. I haven't fished this in a while, but I'm getting excited about it, and I'm probably going to go fish this here pretty soon. So this point leads like all the way down in here out into the deep. So any of these fish in this hole are going to know this thing's there, and they are going to use that to become active. So you can sit right down here at the bottom end of it with down lines, or you can anchor up on top, or you can drift around the edges if you're comfortable doing that. It just really depends. So like in the winter months when fish are a little bit less active and don't want to move as much, at least catfish wise, anchoring can be your best friend, because one, there's usually current because there's more power demand at the dams because everybody's running their heat. And two, you know, it's just cold, and fish are cold-blooded, so they're affected by the weather more than humans because their body temperature changes so quickly. So anchoring can be one of the best things to do in the wintertime, which is what we are now, December. I would anchor right here, and I would give this an hour or more, just depending on how well it goes. And I'd sit right here, and I would cast out into these areas. Now, okay, I'm a striper fisherman, and I think that we've got some stripers in the area that are feeding on shad or, you know, whatever, some kind of bait fish, and they're moving up on top of this. Well, how do I fish this? The best way I would fish this, I would pull planer boards across the top of this, and I would run really long leaders or leashes behind my board. So 20 to 30 feet back behind them, just so I know those baits are kind of getting down. And I may even put a 1/4 ounce weight on it up to 3/4, just so I can get my bait down. And this is an area where the striper will set up and feed. And so when you're looking at this, just depending on what type of fishing you do, you're going to have to go do some research on, you know, what Buck Perry says about fishing something like this for bass. And then you're going to have to kind of, you know, the principles are the same, but how you fish for certain fish are different. You're going to have to edit or modify it to meet what you're trying to do. So walleye and, you know, are different than bass, but they still relate to structure the same way. They may not come up as active as often as bass, but they can. So you just kind of become an expert on your own type of fish, which you like fishing for, and then you apply it to these areas. And so that's our second piece of structure that we're going to talk about, is underwater islands. And then I think for this video, we're going to go over 3. And the next one we're going to talk about is a delta ridge or a side feeder stream cut, which arguably is the best place to fish on these reservoirs. And that's what we're going to go over next. Okay, now we're on a totally different lake than what we've been looking at in the past. And I'm doing that. This is actually about 5 reservoirs down on the Tennessee River chain. And I'm doing that to show you that this is applicable everywhere. Like, it is the same language across the country for fishing. So what we're looking at now is a side feeder stream cut, a creek channel, or a small river channel that leads into the main river channel. And this is in and of itself a highway for the fish. This is where they move through to become active. And generally they have 2 points or ridges on either side that they can come up active on as well. So we've got this really deep water in this area right here. that lots and lots of fish live in. Like the shallowest thing here is 55 feet, and then we get down to 82 down here. But we've got this big bay back in here too. And fish will move back in here to spawn, great spawning area, and they'll move back in here to feed and become active on the bait fish, because you can hunt down a bait fish more easily in shallow water. So they'll move back in here to feed when the conditions are right. All right, and so now we've got to ask ourselves, how do they move back in there? Do they just willy-nilly go up this one ledge right here and go back in here? My argument is no, and the argument that Buck Perry made is no. They've got to have somewhere they know they can go in a direct highway and that they can move through. Kind of like a deer, like they'll take specific easy paths to area, the path of least resistance that offers the clearest way to their target. And the fish's target is food. And so how are they going to do that? Well, in this particular situation, we've got this big giant creek channel that runs the length of this whole bay all the way back in here, and it fingers off in several areas. But then we've got where it dumps straight into the main channel right here. And so these fish, when they become active and they're going to move back in here, they're going to use this area to do that. And you can fish this area in a ton of different ways. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time going over that, but this is an area where they're going to move through. So if you're a bass guy, catfish, striper, walleye, muskie, like they're going to use this to become active in this area right here where the points are, or they're going to come back in here. So that's where usually, me personally, this is the type of area I start fishing first, because I know there's going to be fish there pretty much all year. Certain areas are going to have fish at certain times of the year. That's another story for a different video, but generally, like, you're going to catch fish in this area of some kind all year long, no matter the time of year and the conditions. So like if we've got a really bad cold front, this is a great place for these fish to be, because it's deep, it's stable, and if they do feed, they can come up right here to do that. But if it's perfect, beautiful, like overcast weather, a front's coming in, and they are getting crazy active before the storm comes in, like they're going to move right on top of these areas to feed. So this is called a side feeder stream cut, a creek channel. You know, there's lots of different terminologies for it, but this is one of the best things you can look for when you're out fishing. And this is what I'd highly recommend you doing your own research on and looking and see if you can find some of these areas in your own lakes or rivers. And another one that's even better is where a river comes into the lake, or two rivers converge. Like that is just absolute money. Like some of my best days ever for all different types of fish are in those areas where those two rivers are coming together, because there's just food, there's current, there's all these nutrients that are mixing together. And that's just one of the best areas where you can start looking for fish and start figuring it out on your own. And remember, you can go and network with people and find spots, which is fine. Like everybody does it. Cool. Good networking, do it. Or you can go out and explore and do the hard work and force yourself to figure this stuff out. And in my opinion, that's like the most fun I have and the most rewarding. Like I've had friends give me spots, hey, go try this. These fish are here. And I go and wear them out and like have a blast. But like it doesn't mean as much to me because I didn't put in a lot of really hard work to figure it out to catch that fish. So that's what I would advise you to do. Begin to learn the process of doing this and then love it. Like I love going out here and exploring and trying to figure these lakes out and going on an adventure. And personally, like we could get really deep into the, you know, the brain chemistry of us as humans as to why that's important to do hard things to get dopamine, like the reward chemical. But that's not the type of video we're going to talk about. But it's very important to do those things, especially with fishing, because the days I remember more than anything are the ones that were just brutal, like awful. And like we worked our butts off to figure it out, and we ended up catching a big fish. Now, it may not have been the biggest fish I've ever caught, but it was a good fish. And like we did all that work to get that, and it meant so much more. So just when you're looking at this stuff, be aware that it's going to take a lot of time and effort to learn these things and apply them out on the water. But once you start finding success with them, and you will, like without a shadow of a doubt, it may not be immediate, but once you get the hang of it and you go down the rabbit hole and start learning from guys like me or Corey Allen or, you know, Buck Perry, who's the main guy for doing this, or a bunch of other YouTubers who do stuff like this, and you start learning how to figure this out on your own, and you go adventure and have success, you're going to love this stuff even more. And even if you have a bad day on the water, like, you'll still enjoy it because you know, hey, man, I worked really hard and it just didn't happen. But I learned a lot, and in the future I can apply those things when it's easier and catch a ton of fish. So I guess for now, I've talked a lot in this video and I'm getting kind of hoarse, and we're going to leave it at that. So number one secret to successful fishing is learning what's in these books from Buck Perry. And this one, like, as you can tell, it looks like a college textbook. Like, it's hard to read. And like, I had to force myself to do it. And in my other ones, I've got notes all on everything, trying to get myself to understand it. And I've had to reread them several times, me and my friends, and we kind of bounce ideas off of each other. But once you start to learn those things and understand them, like, the whole fishing world opens up to you. Like, you can go to a different lake you've never been to and have confidence that you're going to be able to figure it out because you've got a system and a language that works everywhere, and you at least begin to understand it. And so that's the main goal of this video. I want you guys to go down the Buck Perry structure fishing rabbit hole. You can YouTube that and watch old videos of this guy. And like, he's an old codger, and you just wouldn't think that he's that good at fishing. You're like, it just doesn't look like what people look like who are good fishermen now. But like, he is, and like, he's got the pedigree to prove it. And all the people he's taught this stuff to directly are some of the best anglers in the world. Don Dixon and, you know, all these other guys. And I think that if you learn anything from my channel, that's the most important thing for fishing success. And for me personally, if you want to learn something from me, learn to embrace the hard work that comes along with this, because it's going to mean so much more on the back end, and it's going to help you in all different areas of your life. So like with me, I've struggled with ADD, ADHD my whole life, so it's hard for me to focus on things that aren't super interesting to me, or, you know, just don't pick my fancy. But because of fishing and me forcing myself to do hard things in that area, I've learned to be better at it in other areas of my life that I am not good at it in. So, you know, detail-oriented stuff, you know, whatever. It just teaches you to work on very hard things that you don't like for a good end reward, a delayed gratification. And learning this stuff is how you do that in the fishing world. And I can promise you, if you do this and spend your time on it, it may not be immediate. It may be several months for you to get the hang of it. And you may experience less success at first than you have been doing beforehand, because you're just learning something new. It's different. It's like when I started going to the gym and lifting, like, I didn't understand how to do any of that stuff, but I had guys who were experienced in it who showed me the ways to do it that made me stronger and healthier more quickly than I would have been able to do without that information, being exposed to it early. So I'm trying to do that here in this video with you as my Christmas gift to you guys. And I hope you have a great new year. Catch a bunch of big fish. And me and the boys, Brian and William, are going to Arizona for a week for a hunting trip. And if you guys want to see that, I can make some videos of that out in the middle of the desert on the Mexican border, if you think that'll be cool to add to the channel. So thanks for watching. If this has been beneficial for you, hit that like and subscribe button so you see more of my videos, and leave a comment in the comment section below, because it helps the algorithm. It puts my content in front of more people, and I want to be able to help more people, and that's one way you can help me do that. So, well, my dog's sighing over there. He's sick of me talking. So I'm going to stop talking. Merry Christmas. Catch some big fish. This is your friend Mark Cooper with Top Knox Fishing, and I hope you have a beautiful week, rest of your year, and a new year that is full of the best fishing memories possible, and stay blessed.